what I can do now, if there's time, we can open it up to questions. Anybody have any questions? Yes.
I don't know if it's so much a question as the time that you went, if I remember my facts, the time that you went to Iraq to try to straighten up or offer them a plan of government. Is that something you did?
Right. I worked and helped them with their elections, and
so
yeah.
You know, you're seeing it firsthand of total chaos, and you come back and look at this situation. And yes, we are very lucky as to be who we are, but I fear that in the future, somebody like you is going to look at us and say, what total chaos.
Well, you know, I think again, this. Let me just mention one thing about Iraq, and just to say that they just held their elections, and I think they went very well. I hope that Alawi is confirmed to be the next prime minister of the country. So that puts us, as long as we maintain this forward movement, we will be down to 50,000 soldiers, 50,000 troops on the ground by the end of August. They will just be advise and assist brigades, not combat units, and we will be out of there completely by December of 2011. Afghanistan is a tougher challenge right now. We have 10,000 of our 30,000 new troops on the ground there. Made big progress in Marja. Kandahar is next. Yes?
Sir, what are your position regarding the current administration as they look at national defense?
The question is, what is my position in regard to...
What is your projection?
Oh, projections?
On the direction of our national defense according to the current administration.
Well, what are the projections of the national defense according to the current administration? I think that this administration is really not focused so much on defense, and so obviously I'm very concerned about what's going to happen to the defense budget. We've already pulled back in terms of procurement, in terms of next generation of weapon systems, so that's a concern. I see the United States it really is Britain in 1946. Britain was heavily in debt. Britain, though, still had a global presence. They were doing basically anti-communist operations in Turkey and Greece to keep them from falling into communist hands. And they said, we just can't do it anymore. And they ceded that responsibility to the United States, and we took over that global presence. And I think we've certainly made mistakes, but we've been a force of good in the world. The power that is coming behind us now, rapidly, is China. And China is not a force of good in the world. Yeah. And so I think that, we have got to, and the policies of this administration are pushing so much of our manufacturing overseas that we are now having briefings in the Armed Services Committee about the loss of the industrial base in the United States and how difficult it is just to do defense procurement in the United States. And I'm working on an issue right now where there's things called rare earth metals, and I think there's 17 of them, and they're used in a lot of high-tech manufacturing, everything from cell phones to weapon systems. China's cornered 95% of the market of rare earth metals. We have no mining right now in the United States of these metals, and we've lost all of our processing capability. In fact, one of the last big processing plants was in Indiana. The Chinese purchased it, had a 5-year agreement to keep it there. At the last day of that 5 years, dismantled the plant, took it to China, reassembled it there with all the technology. We've got to wake up to these things. I've got some legislation going forward to try to recreate a competitive supply chain in the United States. But I'm very concerned about the rising power of China. Yes?
What do you think will happen to Israel?
The question is, what do I think will happen to Israel? I met with the Israelis actually in Israel in August of last year, asked them about the Iran question, and their statements to me, from the Israeli chief of staff to the president to the prime minister, were essentially that they didn't think a direct military strike was feasible. Now, they may have one in the back pocket, but I've seen the plans for where these reactors are, where this processing is in Moran. Very hard to hit. But that's beside. They may have a different plan in their back pocket as well as the administration. But what they did say is, we need sanctions right away. We need sanctions now on Iran. That we believe that that the government has such a tenuous hold over the Iranian people that the right economic sanctions will force the government, should it want to retain power, and it clearly does, to give up its aspirations in terms of nuclear weapons and open it up to an inspection program. But that has been held up. That bill was held up. And so it's just in a conference committee now. And it has not been a priority. And I think that that's wrong. We should have moved forward. The administration, I think, as well as congressional leadership, should have said, you know, hey, the diplomatic stuff, they're just using it, is not going to work. Move forward with sanctions now and show strength in order to get people like China and Russia aboard. That wasn't done. So I think that's going to be a very difficult situation we're going to have to deal with right now, is Iran and nuclear weapons.
Congressman?
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry.
In your opinion, what chance do you think that our AGs, our attorney generals, have in challenging the constitutionality of the healthcare plan?
Well, the question is what about the constitutionality of the healthcare plan? And I think we've had 13 attorney generals across the country challenge it. And this is going to be a very important case that I believe will ultimately go before the United States Supreme Court. And what it involves is the federal government's ability to force or mandate that every American purchase health insurance. Now, states can clearly do this, and Massachusetts has, but there is no, I see no power of the federal government to do that. It is not an enumerated power under the Constitution, and then you can't, even under the most expansive definition of the Commerce Clause, I just can't see where you get there. But it's going to be a very important decision, because if the decision by the court upholds this particular law, then it really means that the federal government can do anything at any time, that it has unlimited power, and I think that would be a terrible decision. So, but God bless Attorney General John Suthers for being one of those people.